right, this is Chairman Anderson. We are coming back from our recess, and at this point, we will have the Board of Education's budget presentation.
Mr. Angley, just step back for a second. He'll be right back.
Okay.
We're going to put the presentation that I handed out to all of you up on the screen so Patty will be able to see it.
Okay, all right. Now, is this presentation also available for the general public on your website as well to review?
Not at the moment, but it will be.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mary. I
George?
heard you.
Okay. Welcome, and feel free to get started whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you, Town Council members. So I am Bob Angeli, Superintendent for the Killingly School System. With me today is Mr. Norm Farron, our chairperson, Kelly Martin, our vice chair, Laura Dumkowski, who is a board member, and Kyle Naparata, another board member. And then in the audience is the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Sue Nash-Ditzel, and our Manager of Business Affairs, Christine Clark. All right. So it's my honor and privilege to be here with you this morning to present on behalf of the Board of Education the budget that they adopted at their board meeting last month. So we'll just move on to the next page. Oh, they're still setting up with the remote. There we go. So the first couple of pages in this presentation are just timeline for the budget development process for the Board of Education. You'll see we start in October and then work through a series of meetings, presentations, and budget decisions to the point where I submit a superintendent's budget to the Board of Ed, and then that budget is acted upon by the Board of Education at their meeting, is adopted, and then the budget you have before you today is the one that the Board of Ed approved. And so here we are, Saturday, April 1st at 10 o'clock, presenting the budget to you. Next slide, thank you. Then when we build the budget, we are looking at the goals that the Board of Education has established for the educational programming that it would like to provide the students, but also goals around how the board supports district staff. So on the screen are two goals, one pertaining to academic achievement and another one pertaining to talent development. Next slide, please. On the next slide, you have two additional goals that the board has been working on over the past few years. One is on advancing the academic achievement of, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't advance my slide. One is on organizational systems, so developing systems within the school system that will facilitate safe and healthy learning environment and working environment for our students and staff, but also in the development of systems that create access for our students to 21st century digital learning opportunities, as well as behind the scenes developing systems and processes for the organization to operate on an efficient and effective manner. And then school climate and culture is about creating a welcoming, nurturing environment for our students, for our staff, for the families of our students and staff, and for the general community to feel welcome in our schools. And for our students then to have opportunities to interact outside of the community or into the community as part of their educational programming. Next slide. And then Of course, the Killingly Public Schools developed a profile of a graduate. I will tell you that this is very much a living document within our organization. It is referenced frequently in decision-making and planning around programming for our students, staff development for our teachers and paras and other employees, our administrators. It is constantly being used. It is constantly being looked at of whether or not it is, this document is 3 or 4 years old now, whether or not it's already starting to need to be edited and revised to keep up with current climes. So it is very much a document that is used within our district to guide our work. Next slide, please. So, upholding Board of Ed goals, something that we are striving to do, but I always announce during our budget presentations that we are always trying to be as efficient as possible and fiscally responsible to the community of Killingly, the taxpayers of Killingly. And so that really is a balancing act, right? Because the goal of the Board of Education, right, while we listed 4 goals, their purpose is to provide a safe learning environment and then to advance the learning of all the students that come to us, right? And so we have to budget appropriately so that we are not, through the budget process, diminishing our capacity to meet the needs of our students and our staff. So on this slide here, we use this slide in the budget presentation to the board, but I thought it was also a relevant slide for the town council and for the public. So we do try to control the budget, right? This question has come up in other budget presentations. Are there grant funds where some of the things that we like to do can be provided through grants? Are there things that we are holding on to that we shouldn't be holding on to? So should there be reductions in staff or reductions in programs? And so we do look at all of those things. And then in the middle and bottom of the slide, you'll see that there are things that we also need to deal with. There's always been inflation concerns, but through the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, inflation, as you all know, in your personal and work lives, is just incredible, right? At one time, it was double digits inflation, right? It's at last we checked with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the inflation rate was at 6.4, right? Which is, it's extremely high, right? Transportation, fuel costs for us up by 48%. That's $100,000 in our budget just for putting gas in the buses, right? Gas and diesel. Extraordinary. And then maintenance supplies, if you're involved in construction or things like that, you'll know that the cost of supplies, one, they're hard to find because there's a shortage, and then to actually make the purchase is very expensive. The cost of the supplies have gone up, and the cost of shipping those supplies has gone up. Right, and then on the other side, we also have increased costs for labor, right? Salaries and benefits have gone up. The contracts that we engage in to contract for services outside the organization have gone up. So the cost of our own hiring of people and the cost of contracting for other organizations to provide us with people, be it services that we have been unable to provide on our own, such as speech language services, or if we're hiring out contractors to do work in our buildings. That has the cost for that has gone up greatly. The cost for waste management has gone up greatly. Okay, next slide, please. So I brought in a budget and presented on my behalf by Dr. Nash at a 5.3%. And that, and you know, I do have the slide that shows the history of superintendent budget requests for our school system. This is one of the higher ones, right? I'll take ownership of that. But around the state of Connecticut, this was not an unusually high number this year, as the COVID grants start to go away, the ESSER grants start to go away, and I've mentioned this to the board and to the town council in the past, that there are things that we have been putting in those grants that there's value to them. So we want to retain some of those things. And so in order to retain them, if there is not an alternative funding source, then they are asked for in the general budget. All right, so we came in, I came in at 5.3. The Board of Education reduced that, and the board approved the budget at 3.94%. And again, when I show you the history slide, that will be one of the higher budget requests over the last several years. But again, in the state of Connecticut, it is not an unusually high budget coming out of pandemic. It's not. Next slide, please. So so this is a slide that I generally have not provided the town council in the past, but I wanted to, you to have a full understanding of where we started and where we are right now and how we got there. All right, so when I asked my administrators and my school and district department staff to put together their budget requests for the 23-24 school year, and then we met and gathered all that information, and they had to defend their requests in meetings with me and the business manager, and also at times with Dr. Nash's involvement. They came in at 12.11% increase, right? So the administrators and the district staff are seeing a great need. And part of that is a little bit of an artificial bump, right? So it's things that are might be falling out of the grants that have worked their way into budget requests. But it's also things that in the spring, if the board has a fund balance being projected for the end of the school year, we will buy things in advance of the following year and put them into play towards the end of the current school year. So we do some spring purchasing with some of the projected budget surplus, right? And when you do that, you reduce your line item in the budget for the next year. And so when it comes time to do budget development, you get that artificial bump because you reduced it by doing early purchasing, okay? So some of it is that, and then there were quite a lot of new requests, what we call decision packages. So we're at 12.11%. We knew that that would never be an acceptable amount, not for the Board of Education, and certainly it would be irresponsible to bring that forward for the community. So we reduced it down to 5.3, and the way we did that is we made some budget adjustments, and I will explain those in a little more detail. We did identify some things that we could do some purchasing this spring, and then we reduced a lot of the items that were in the decision packages. So we've already removed a little over $3 million from the requests that came in from administration and staff. And so my budget came in at $47,418,372, or 5.3%. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the budget adjustments that we've already done to those initial requests to get down to 5.3. So, back to that slide where, you could look for alternative funding sources or you can make cuts. We've already moved $444,024 of items out of those requests into grants, which means that we have to rewrite the grants, do a revision to those grants, and some things that were in the grants we're going to lose those, but the things that we're putting into the grants were identified as a higher priority item than what may have been in the grant already. So we put things out of the request and put them into grants. We're estimating that we're going to have some retirements, and if we're able to hire new staff at a lower pay scale in the contracts, then we're estimating that there's some savings there. And then we did some other reductions, right? And you'll see the first bullet under there is we are reducing our paraprofessional staff. So we have several unfilled half-time paraprofessional positions. That is 16 positions that we have been unable to fill seemingly for the past couple of years, right? And we have been working to find other ways to meet our IEP obligations for our special education students, and we believe that there is opportunity. It's tough to say that, but it's a budget opportunity where we can reduce our paraprofessional staff. We have been purchasing large quantities of paper, but during the pandemic, we didn't use as much paper, so we have quite a supply built up on paper, so we're reducing paper costs. We've reduced field trip line item for the Goodyear School. As you know, we collect tuition for the Goodyear program, and we think that we could fund those things that way. Reduction of IT lease. So one of the ways that the Board of Ed tries to control spending on devices, so new devices or refreshing old devices, right? So, refresh old device means you get rid of the old device and you replace it, right? So one of the ways to keep that from becoming a huge budget request is you fund those over time through a lease program. And so we have taken some money out of some new leases that we wanted to implement. So we've kind of slowed our refresh a little bit. And that's always a little bit of a risk. You hope your devices last a little bit longer than operationally what they're set up. As you know, the technology changes very quick, and we do like to do a refresh every 5 to 6 years. And then the illustrative math program, we had that double funded. We had it in a grant and we had it in the budget, so we just took it out of the budget. And so we were able to catch that. All right, so we had those changes and already done. Next slide, please. And then surplus purchases, right? So we've already identified $601,031 of things that we could possibly purchase with surplus funds, right? They are supply items, textbooks, and you'll see the textbook number is low. We don't often buy textbooks in terms of actual books. We're digital in many cases. We still do have some textbooks, but the dollar amount for textbooks, used to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now that's greatly reduced for the actual paper versions of books. And then equipment and property, we see that there's about 131,000, 132,000 worth of items there that we could pre-purchase. So, again, I'm providing this information, so in case the town council feels like, the board usually does some spring purchasing, so maybe we could reduce that 394 to a different number, and then the board could do spring purchasing. I'm just letting you know, we're already identifying spring purchasing just to get to the 5.3 that I brought, okay? And while we will have a surplus this year, right, the town council, the Board of Ed knows that we kind of rolled the dice for this year. We got a $1 increase, but the board had been returning large sums of money to the town, and we said, well, let's roll the dice for a year and see how it works out, right? And so the $1 is going to be sufficient, because we're going to have a surplus again. And it kills me to say that, because it's not that we found ways to be more efficient. It's really because we have been understaffed all year long, right? And that's really why there's going to be a surplus. It is almost all in salaries, right? Salaries and benefits. Next slide, please. All right, so while we are making reductions, we are also trying to find a way to shore up some of our programmings and to make our programs a little stronger. So we are looking to add a psychologist for the district. The district is served by one psychologist. I've worked in districts where every single school had one, and depending upon the need, there might have been two school psychs at a school. Our entire district is served by one. And not because of lack of trying. We have had an open school psychologist vacancy since about 2017, and we've been unable to fill it. And instead of filling it with a school psych, we will plug in a school social worker or a school counselor, some related service. But those two positions do not provide all of the same services that a school psych would provide. So we're looking to re-engage and try to hire another school psych. Our central office, business office, we feel is understaffed. And so we are looking to add, so it says business office assistant. This is not a clerical position. This is like an assistant business manager type position that we'd be looking to add. And the $100,000 is salary and benefits. So it would be less if the person didn't take the benefits, but it's likely that they would, right? At the high school, we're looking to add .55 family consumer science teacher. We have a part-time position there now. Class enrollment is good in that area, and we often have students that get turned away from taking courses, and we'd like to be able to grow our early childhood program back to where it used to be. So family consumer science, you have traditional foods classes and cooking, right? But you also have early childhood classes. We have the Head Start program that's provided by EastCon, housed at the high school, like a lab class, and so the early childhood class meets on one side of a two-way mirror, right? And then the early childhood class is on the other side, so it serves as a lab for our students, and we have had more student interest in this area. And then for the Office of Operations and Maintenance, we're going to be adding a part-time custodian for the Goodyear program. We currently have part-time custodial services over there, but the custodian is not in that building all day long. So the custodian comes in late morning and then stays through the end of the day. We don't have a full-time custodian, and as you may imagine, with 3-, 4-, and 5-year-old students in that school all day long, they don't wait to make a mess until the custodian gets there. Things are going on in that building all day long. And so we'd like to increase staffing there. So all of the decision packages totals $278,252, right? So we didn't bring all the decision packages forward to the Board of Education. We brought these four. The Board of Ed agreed with them. The board does hold a series of budget workshop meetings in between their regular meetings through the month of February into early March. And all the decision packages were discussed with the board at that time. These are the ones we felt the board would support, and that's what happened. All right, next slide, please. So for, again, the budget history, so you'll see I came in at 5.3, which is the third highest out of this date range. So I give you the budget history back to the 15-16 budget year. The Board of Ed came in at 394. This is also the third highest over that course of time. And then the adopted budget, well, we're not there yet, right? Referendum, we'll get there. Next slide, please. So this gives you a kind of a generalized breakdown of how we get to the 3.94, and then I'll speak in a little bit more detail in some of these areas. So salaries, you can see, will be going up by $445,416. That line item in the budget then is a 1.61%. In the overall budget, it's a 0.99% increase. The town council has heard, in the years past that our contracts have been some of the lowest in this area of the state, and this area of the state has some of the lowest contracts amongst the whole state. So we were like the lowest of the lowest. And so our Board of Ed has recognized that, and not in all the contract areas, so I don't want to put that out there either, but in some contracts, we were low, regionally and across the state. And the board has realized that, and over the past couple of contract negotiations have made changes. So for instance, in the current teacher's contract, what the board had done was eliminate the beginning step so that beginning teachers could come in at a higher step. So anybody that was brand new to our district and brand new as a teacher, was their first year, they were coming in on our step 4 this year, right? So we had eliminated those beginning steps to make our initial salary offers more attractive and more competitive. In the next year budget, that continued in the first year. We added a step at the bottom for our people that are on top steps, so they could get a bump. Instead of just a general wage increase, they would get a step increase. And then in the next couple of years of that contract, the teachers will get step and general wage, which will make our teaching contracts more competitive. So the board has been working to, honor the work of our teachers, our custodians, our paras, the administrators, all of our contracted employees, but also to put together pay scales that will be attractive to new people as people retire or leave our district. The benefit line, it's an $81,000 increase. The overall budget, that's a small increase. Purchase services, so this is out of the 300, 400, and 500 line, but this is us buying other people's work, right? Contracting out for services. Could be legal fees, it could be hiring out plumbers or electricians, it could be hiring out for professional development services, or services directly to our students like psych evals, because we only have one school psychologist, and so sometimes we have to contract out for psych evals or speech and language therapy, et cetera. And so you do see a sizable increase there. Overall impact to the budget, 1.59%. Supply line, 0.36, and you know that we're already we've reduced the request there with the anticipation of doing some spring spending. Property, same thing there. We reduced the request with the mindset of using some surplus funds. And then other, right, that is that catch-all that pays for tuition reimbursement for our staff that have that in their contract. It will pay for uniforms for those people that have that in their contract. It does pay occasionally for, food and beverages for celebrations that the school district has. And then contingency, generally we have 0 in contingency, and we have 0 in there again. But this year we started with a negative balance in contingency, and that was the use of the non-lapsing account as a kind of a safety net, right? So one of the ways that the board agreed to manage basically a 0% increase that it received was not to cut anything out of the budget to get to 0, but to use the non-lapsing account up to $275,671. That was the difference between what the board had asked for and what got approved in referendum. And we set it up that we would use the non-lapsing account to cover that should we need it, right? It doesn't look like we're going to need it, but in the current year budget, we have a negative balance in that, so we have to bring it back up to 0, which means you're adding $275,671 just to bring that back to 0. Right, so you get a little bit of an increase there. Next slide, please. All right, and so these are just the big areas or the bigger areas where the 3.94% comes out of. So salaries, benefits together, that's a 0.55% increase over the current year. We did, through a partnership with the town, we were able to add armed security guards to the schools, 2 of which have already started, and my understanding is there are a couple other candidates in the pipeline. It's a measure that the board and I wanted to do. We don't feel that it's necessarily a deterrent, right? And when you look at an analysis of school shootings do occur in schools that have SROs and armed security guards. However, those schools that have the SROs and armed security guards, you have a greatly reduced response time, right? And so that is really the primary objective, reducing that response time, but also now you have a dedicated staff member that their sole purpose is to watch for threats to the safety of the students and the staff. We're going to have one at each building, but there's a cost to that, right? So they are town employees, but the board is paying. So there's $417,040 for that, and so that is a 0.93% increase to the board's budget. Again, the decision package is 0.62, the contingency 0.61, and then everything else in the budget, $555,238. That's a 1.23% increase, right, from everything else that's in the budget. And that's how you get to a $1,775,319 increase over the current year budget, which is a 3.94% increase. Next slide, please. So, what changed between my request of 5.3 and the board's approved budget of 3.94? There are additional proposed reductions to our staff, right? In any school budget, the bulk of the money is in the people, right? And so we don't look there first, right? Which is why you saw, let's move something to a grant, let's pre-purchase if we can. But eventually, if the budget reduction request is big, you have to look at your staff. That's where people are. You know, that's where the money is. It's in your staff and your programs. So we have identified 7 certified staff positions, right, for savings of $578,278. So certified staff, those are at this point teaching positions. But we're always looking at the ones that we have preliminary identified and whether or not we could continue with that request, or we'd have to look elsewhere. So anyone who's in a certified position, which would include administration, you know, we would be looking at those positions to make that money. And then there was 2 additional non-certified staff positions that were identified, and those were library aid positions that we have at the high school and the intermediate school. And so total staff reduction, $613,254. That was a reduction of 1.36%, and so that's how we get to 3.94. Next slide, please. So this is in the budget book that was sent over to you, but I always try to put it up during this presentation. We do bring revenue to the town, right? And we will be bringing revenue to the town next year. We are projecting a lower revenue to the town. We don't believe that we will be bringing in as much money in terms of tuitions next year. That remains to be seen, but we go by the information that we get from the other superintendents that send students to our school system. This is basically students that come to us for the ag program, as well as we have both Pomfret and Brooklyn have identified Killingly High School as a designated school for their students because they don't have their own high schools, and so they have usually designated us or Woodstock Academy or Woodstock Academy, and then, you know, the kids always have choices of the state tech schools or magnet school program. And so we have Brooklyn generally sends most of their students to us, but Brooklyn has let us know that some of their students higher than normal or higher than usual, a number of their students are opting for state tech school this coming school year, so we anticipate a reduction in tuition there. And then for VOAG, we are showing a reduction there, but there are, like, and we also show the ECS. We're not really sure what's going to go on there. There is a bill that's working its way through the state legislature at this time, 5003. It is a funding bill. It is not reflected in the governor's proposed budget. So there are competing budget proposals that the state legislature is looking at. The governor's proposed budget, this bill 5003, and then other things that cost money that you'll find in the bills. I'll tell you that through the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, I get updates on the bills. And the last update that I got, there were 53 pages of bills that have impact in education, right? And those are just some of the bills that the state legislature is acting on this year or considering. So it was 53 pages of bills just impacting education. It is, keeps your head spinning trying to keep track of them all. But 5003 is a funding bill that would change how tuitions are handled for the ag program, for charter schools, for magnet schools. It would change how the education cost sharing grant is handled. It will change how the the excess cost grant is handled. And so we're all kind of like, all right, will Bill 5003 get passed? Will the governor's budget proposal get passed? Will there be some blending of them? If 5003 goes through, that would actually be beneficial to Killingly, based upon estimated revenues that would come in and tuitions that we would no longer have to pay directly. But we're not sure yet. So that's always a budget unknown. So, but anyway, we will be bringing in revenue. We're just anticipating it won't be as high as it has been. Next slide, please. And then this is our grants. I know that it's not always easy to see. The only way to, I guess, get bigger font in there is to break it up into multiple slides, and so I am considering that. But anyway, these are most of the grants that we deal with for education, all the title grants, Title I, II, III, and IV. We are thinking that most of those will remain as they have been, which means they'll be flat without an increase. So when we have staff in these grants and our salaries go up or the cost of the benefits shift, but the grant doesn't change, right? Some of those things have to come out of grants and go into the general budget. So that's just the way it works. And then our Alliance grant, right, because we're on an Alliance school system, we get a little over $300,000 for that. We generally pay for tutoring and after-school programming out of that grant. We have a grant that maintains our Family Resource Center. This year, there was a bill working its way through the state legislature that would have mandated that Alliance districts use a portion of their Alliance district grant to create a Family Resource Center in all their elementary schools. So we would have had to create 2 more Family Resource Centers using our Alliance district grant without that money going up. So we would have lost programming. It doesn't look like that bill has legs at the moment. So we don't think that that will be going through, but there was also another bill that was going to mandate that all Alliance district grants use 10% of the grant to increase their capacity in recruiting, hiring, and retaining minority teachers or teachers of color. That, I think, is a well-intended proposal, but it is simply not the responsibility of Alliance districts to hire minority teachers. Every school system in the state of Connecticut could probably benefit for that. And to put the burden on the Alliance districts, we pushed back on it, and we don't think that will have any legs, but you never know, right? So while the Alliance district grant may not go up, there could be pieces of legislation that require us to spend that money in certain ways, and if that happens, we'll lose other things that are in that grant. So anyway, we also have The primary mental health grant, that's a PIXE grant, that's what it used to be called, and so we provide SEL programming at the elementary level through that. You can see it's a small grant. School readiness program and a Smart Start, those are grants that we use to support the Goodyear Early Childhood Education Program. The rest of the grants that are listed there, the Perkins grant supports career education programming. We use it at our high school. Bless you. We have the homeless youth grant that is used to support students that are identified as being homeless in our school system. And then you have all the ESSERs, right? And so those are grants that were born out of the pandemic through federal funding. And as you may recall, they started off with the COVID relief grant that is come and gone. ESSER 1 that is going away. ESSER 2 that will be going away. ESSER 3, which we are using to pick up some of the things from ESSER 2 to continue. But eventually all the ESSERs go away. And then there were breakout ESSERs. I don't know any other way to put it, because it used to be ESSER 1, 2, and 3, or the ARP ESSER was ESSER 3, but then the state peeled out some money out of the ESSERs and said, okay, now this is an IDEA, so it's ESSER for special ed, or it's ESSER for this, that, or the other thing. So there were these smaller grants that came out of the ESSER program to support specific things. Right? And then IDEA, the last grant that's on the bottom there, that is a federal grant to support special education within the school system. Some of those grants are multi-year grants. That's why you see they straddle years, right? So there are 2-year grants. All right, next slide, please. So the budget unknowns, always the status of the state and federal grants. We don't always know that in a timely way, right? So the Board of Ed passes a budget, then the town passes a budget, and then the state passes a budget, right? And so it's always a little counterintuitive for me to think that the budget works in that direction, but that's the system that we work under. So then as each subsequent entity passes their budget, sometimes we have to go back and rethink ours, right? So the pension, right now, we don't have the updated numbers on that, at least not in terms of the 3.94% budget. Then our out-of-district placements, those are placements that we make, as well as there could be agency placements. We control ours, and over the past several years, we have had a reduction in the outplacements that the district has made. We've been trying to build capacity to keep students in our district, as well as bring students back from outplacements. But to do that, you have to add staff, you have to add the things that you need for the programs that the children used to get in the outplacement. We don't have any control really over state agencies that place students in an outplacement. And a lot of times that's Department of Children and Families. And then fuel and utilities, already mentioned, you know, the rising costs just for the bus fuel. And then the decision package items, we put them in here as an unknown because they're included in the 3.94, but if that is not ultimately the budget number that we get, you know, we revisit everything that's in our budget, including the things that were in the decision packages, should we need to make further reductions. Right. Next slide, please. So the next slide, again, is just a reminder what the Board of Ed approved. $46,805,118. That's an increase of $1,775,319, or 3.94% request. And then the last couple of slides, a little bit on enrollment history in the district. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you could see that the trajectory over the last couple of years is upward. We've had increasing enrollment, which is nice to see because in Connecticut, the general population in Connecticut is decreasing, and that includes student population, but killingly, so far, over the last few years, we've seen an increase, which is nice. And the next slide gives you some perspective on where our class sizes are at the elementary level. Again, you know, in your lower grades, you like to maintain relatively low class size so that the young learners get a lot of individualized attention from their teachers. And then the last slide is question comments. And again, we have a whole team of people here eager to help you understand our budget request.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple things I want to bring up. First of all, I know everybody's feeling the crunch of the increase in fuels. The fleet of buses, are they primarily diesel or gasoline?
We are primary gasoline, but we do have some diesel as well. We haven't done anything yet with electrifying the fleet. There are some grants out there, but we don't. Okay. We would need the whole infrastructure if we were going to change over to an electric fleet.
Yep. One question, you may or may not have the answer for this. Of the gasoline vehicles, do you know if any of them have flex fuel capabilities, as in they can run off E85?
I don't think so. Christine, are you aware? Do you know if any of our buses are flex fuel, or are they simply gasoline or diesel?
I think most of our big buses are diesel. The smaller are gas, yeah.
Okay, so the big ones are diesel, the small
Okay.
ones are gas.
Okay. Being in the automotive industry, one of my biggest fleet account that I have where I service, I informed them recently that their 3/4 of their fleet is flex fuel, and they had no clue what flex fuel was. Right now, the E85, the downfall is up in this area. We don't have any place to fill it. But if that was something where the Board of Ed in a town had flex fuel vehicles, that might be something to look into, having a filling station here with the E85, because the cost of it right now is about 60% of what gasoline is. So that might be
That's what,
something
a higher
to-
ethanol level?
Yeah, it's 85% ethanol.
Yeah.
It's the closest station right now is actually Waterford, but my account is right in Montville, so they've started. They're seeing substantial savings on their fleet by running the vehicles on E85 that they can.
Okay.
So next thing would be when you talked about the increase in the SRO reimbursement, you had it at, I believe it was 417,000 over the current year. When the town manager went over our town budget, it actually reflected a different figure. It reflected 440.
I think you may be confusing SRO with the armed
Or,
security
yeah, the
officers.
ASO. Yep. Yeah. Sorry.
So we're just going to maintain the one SRO at this time.
Yep.
There was some thinking around adding an additional SRO, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to fill the 5 ASO positions. So that $417,040, I think, is for the ASOs, not the SRO.
Okay, yeah, the town budget is actually combined on our side where it's SRO and ASO reimbursement. An increase on that, on the town budget side showed that the Board of Ed was gonna be, reimbursing the town $447,000, where more this year, whereas you had 417.
Well, the 417 is strictly for the ASOs.
Okay.
The other costs could be linked to the SRO.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And one other question, because you had talked about, you had mentioned in there the increase from fuel and utilities. Do you know how much of an impact having the solar at the schools has had on your utility bills?
So that is a difficult question to answer, right? It's one that the board has asked. We had Adam Teff, the consultant, come in and do a presentation for the board. I would say that budgetarily, the impact has not really shown itself the way I think some people would have expected it to. But the savings would come in for the energy that's generated by the solar panels. We are spending less on that than the energy that we are buying directly from Eversource. So if our energy use has increased, right, it's hard to say that, these are the savings until you say, okay, X number of kilowatts were purchased at this rate, and had we not had the solar panel rate, we would have had to spend this amount. So I don't have that dollar amount, but just knowing that we are generating energy from those solar panels and we're purchasing at a lower rate, there is some savings there. It's difficult to say that, I've been able to cut the electrical line item by any specific dollar amount, because we have to go by what we've been using over time. Right?
Yeah,
It's-
and the fact of with the cost of energy going up right now, I mean, it may be just offsetting the increase we're seeing from Eversource anyway.
Right, and the good thing is that we're locked in with the power purchase agreement for the energy that is generated by the solar panels, so there's no increase there.
Yeah.
We're locked in.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything from?
If the gas ever gets connected to the schools for the heating, is that gonna stabilize and decrease the heating for the winter?
Yeah, I like the way you lead that with if the gas ever, right? Because we've been waiting for over a year for this thing to
Right.
happen, right? And there were reasons for the delays, right? We had a gas line, Eversource had to put a gas line across the bridge over 395. And that was delayed because the DOT was going to do work on that bridge, right? And so they got that sorted out. So now it's really just getting Eversource and some of the other contractors to come in and complete the work. We recently had pads poured. Eversource had a change in the person who was overseeing the projects. So we poured a pad of a certain size based upon a change in the spec. And then the new person said, oh, that pad's too small. So now we're looking at how to rectify that without tearing out the new pad and repouring a whole another one.
Wow.
So we've experienced some difficulties there. But to your question, it will reduce the cost because we had to go out and purchase heating oil for this school year that we didn't anticipate having to do. So we do expect to have a reduction in those costs because gas will come in cheaper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What was the budget surplus for 21, 22 school year?
So we don't actually have a number yet because the audit is not done. But it was about 2,700,000, I think, just offhand. And then there would have been excess cost that we did not use that the town also receives.
And what is the current budget surplus for 22, 23?
I don't have that number because it is a working number at this point, but I've already told you that we hope to spend about $600,000 this spring. So we anticipate a little bit more than that. What exactly, I'm not sure at this point.
So you don't have the current number?
I don't, because we calculate it kind of quarterly when we do the quarterly reports for the board. And so, the next quarterly report will be given to the board at, its second April meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Use of the non-lapsing account. I'm looking, like, next year, I guess you're using, 275,000, and is there any way we can use it more? I mean, in there is like $2 million, and I know sometimes, like, when you're talking about the surplus at the end of the year, it's a moving target that you really don't, like, now, you don't know what it's gonna be. But if we had something in place, like, projects you have a design for, and then if you didn't use the non-lapsing account for whatever, you have, like, June 30th or whatever, then you could write purchase orders at that time to get some of these projects moving. Is there some way to anticipate a little bit more to, because we're putting a lot of money, you're giving it on the town side. And I get some people saying, wait a minute, it's Board of Ed money, it should be spent by the Board of Ed. So instead, I would like to see, use the non-lapsing account, but if you don't use it, if you have excess money, it goes to the town side. I don't know how we could, but you have to anticipate having a project almost in a shovel-ready status to be able to take advantage of the non-lapsing account.
So, and the board has over time approved use of the non-lapsing account for facilities projects, right? And Monday, there is a facilities committee meeting where I will be asking for two projects. We have also used a non-lapsing account, as you noted, for the current year budget as a kind of a budget safety net, should we have needed it for this year. And that would have covered general educational costs for the school system if we needed to. In the Killingly Community Center project, at a recent meeting, we were discussing the heating system at 79 Westfield Avenue, and whether or not the project would move forward with a steam heating system, which is currently in that building, or switch over to a hot water system. And at least the thinking at that time was perhaps we should switch over to a hot water system. But we've been experiencing difficulties in the heating systems at several of our schools, right? Most of the buildings are old. Even the high school at 12 years old is beginning to experience age issues. So we had 2 or 3 steam pipes, rust through, and we were losing heat at 79 Westfield Avenue, and we've had to make repairs. Because similar to the Killingly Memorial School project, where the town approved a certain amount of money to do that project, and then inflation struck in a big way, and we're not able to do everything that we wanted to do at KMS without additional input of money, right? So, the Board of Ed is funding the kitchen equipment for the KMS project, right? Otherwise, we would have lost, over $400,000 of stuff in the KMS renovation. Similarly, we may be asked to fund a heating system upgrade for that building, and maybe in a manner where it's ratioed out based upon Board of Ed use of that building versus the community center use of that building. But an initial number, without really having the details on what that would be yet, was a little over $300,000. So the board could be asked to fund that, and where would the board get that money? We'd be looking at the non-lapsing account for that.
That's what I'm looking at, to try to
Yeah.
utilize. I mean, we have it there, it's for more one-of-a-time type projects, but I think what you said earlier, Lula asked about what your projected surplus might be, like, it might be 2.7, that's a moving target, but if we're having projects, if we're gonna put, if that is the right number, that's gonna be returned. We
So
want-
not 2.7, that was from last school year,
Okay,
right?
well,
Isn't that what you asked me? Ulu?
I asked you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was around 2.7.
okay, so,
So for this school year, it'll be lower than that.
oh, well, I would like to utilize the non-lapsing account. What I'm trying to get at, are we maximizing the use of the non-lapsing account? Where,
Yeah, I understand your question. You know, it's not intended to be sitting in that account, you know, just earning interest, right? It's money you intended to support the school system,
right,
right?
right.
And so, you know, we have been using it to do those things. We replaced a generator at 79 Westfield Avenue. We're doing elevator upgrades at the central office building and at KISS. We had a roofing project slated for some of that work. The problem is, we have a lot of projects going all at the same time. We're using it for the gas project at the schools, right? We have a lot of the projects underway, all of which have had significant delays. So, and increase in costs. I have had to go back to the board to say, you know, the elevator projects now cost more. We didn't know it, but we had to air condition the mechanical room for one of the elevators, right? That elevator has been there for decades. Nobody ever said you need to air condition the mechanical room, but all of a sudden, that's what we had to do, right? And so you have to deal with those things as they come along. So I've had to go back to the board. So we could continue to identify projects for the non-lapsing account, but what we'd really like to do is start closing some of these projects out before we add more things to our operations and maintenance staff to keep track of, as well as, you know, the business office to keep track of, you know, all these projects that are ongoing that we are unable to close out, right? So we're trying to get some things to close out so we could get a grip on where we could go next. But like I said, I'm asking the board to add 2 more projects to our twirling plates this coming Monday.
Well, that's what I'm saying, as long as we have stuff, like I said, shovel ready, and because you can't write the purchase, because you don't know what's going on at your regular budget, but if you have excess, if you're gonna put more money into the non-lapsing account, and you don't have any space to put it in there, and it goes to the general town budget, that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that point, to how, and then
Yeah.
that's confusing, how do you close this out, I don't know what.
We got to get the projects done, right? So we're waiting on parts for the elevators. We're waiting on contractors for the gas line. We're waiting on, well, that's basically it. We're either waiting on parts or we're waiting on the contractors for all these projects that we have underway.
Yeah, I'd just like to add just a couple things, just to explain some of these increased costs have really had, like, the state inspector on that elevator project was changed, and we were never told about the air conditioning requirement when that was planned. So that's kind of like a last-minute thing that was thrown in there. So a lot of those extra costs come from things like that, and of course, you know, the state DOT needing to upgrade the bridge, things like that. So there's a lot of things that get thrown at, there's so many projects going on, a lot of things get thrown at it at the last minute that you really have no control over. And that $400,000 we threw extra into KMS, that if we hadn't done that, it would have meant that the foods had to be stored off-site and brought in at the last minute to preparation. So that would have cost us a lot more than that in the long term. So that's why a lot of these projects got extra funding like that. But I agree with Mr. Grandelski 100%. I think that account, because our budget is so large, I think that account needs to grow so that we have more flexibility in those items. And, I'm sure the taxpayers can see we're not throwing this money out the window. It's going for valid emergency uses to fund projects that were underfunded because of inflation or delays that were thrown at the district at the last minute. So I heartily endorse that.
I will also add that currently we're in a partnership with the town and the town engineer. We went out for request for proposals for HVAC systems in the schools. There was already a round of grants that went through the state, but you had to apply early in December. And so, to Mr. Grandelski's point, you need to have shovel-ready projects. And we did not for HVAC in our schools. We have identified need, but you need to have engineered plans, right? So we have partnered with the town through the town engineer. We went out to RFP. We've now received those so that we can perhaps hire an engineering firm to really do a study on our schools so that should more funds become available for HVAC work in the schools, maybe we will be in time to have a shovel-ready project. Those grants tend to be matching grants, all right? So based upon a town's reimbursement rate. And so we would still have to come up with money to do these projects. And so one of the ways to fund that, again, would be through non-lapsing. And those HVAC projects are going to be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars for all 5 schools, right? And I include the high school in there because in case you haven't heard, we've been having HVAC issues at the high school, right? Because we've had lightning strikes, et cetera, over there that have knocked our systems offline.
I have a few questions. I find it very difficult to say yes or no on a budget when we don't have a surplus number because we don't really know what's coming back. Also, on the others, there's quite a few others again this year. I'd like to see when you come back like a breakdown of others. On page 2, it says $626,000, $299, a 208% increase. Page 2 of the big book down the bottom. Of purchase services, other purchase services. It's very difficult to say yes or no when I don't have any idea what those things are.
Well, it is in the book, what that is, when you read further into the book. When you look at the first couple of pages, that's just a general increase by area. But when you look further into the book, you'll find that that is mostly the armed security officers. That's
The
of that
other
increase of
increases the ASOs.
$417,040.
So we didn't break that out, because I would like to see a breakdown, honestly, but
Yeah,
if that's what
so
it is,
it is in the book.
where is that?
So if you look in, I gotta look for the
Oh,
exact page.
sorry. I'm after you, Michelle. Sorry, guys.
Christine, you know
Hi, Bob.
where that is? Hi, Patty. She just say hi to me? Yes. Okay.
And I can go on while she, page
What-
55.
Page 55.
Yeah, let me look here. Okay, so you're looking at the $84,000 line to $500,000. Yeah, so that's your ASOs you're saying? Okay, yeah, because is that indicated in coding? Is that where I should have seen that? You know what I mean? I'm just saying it's hard to see. There's no breakdown.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you look at it, that's the 5590 line.
Okay, that's the
And then if you
ASOs.
refer back to page 2, your 5590 line is the other purchase services.
Right, so it doesn't say ASOs. It just says other purchase services. That's all I'm saying. It would make it much easier if every other was just delineated for us. Likewise, I would like to see the surplus when we come back. Like it's, how do you say yes or no on something when you don't really know what's coming back? I'd like to see, I'm
To
just,
that point, you don't even know what last year's surplus was yet.
yeah, well, that's kind of
estimating-
unacceptable to me, is what I'm saying, that to make a decision on $45 or $47 million and not know what's coming back, I don't really appreciate that. And I don't blame anybody. We're all up against crazy things, quotas and inflation. I'm just saying that's, as a elected official, it's kind of unacceptable for me to have to make that decision. Non-lapsing fund, I'd like to see that in these things when we come back to the joint meeting. And then the last question I had,
Could you please clarify that? I don't know what you mean by that.
well, it's, is the non-lapsing fund in here?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I would just be curious what you guys have to play with. Isn't there the high school meeting?
Yes, but
Yeah.
that's not a,
Yeah,
So the non-lapsing fund is actually on the town side of the fence. I can provide you with
Excellent.
the
Yeah.
Breakdown of what's
Yeah,
been
'cause that helps
in there
me to
and
understand,
what's been
yeah.
expended on there. As far as the next meeting, it's actually your public hearing.
right.
So the
That's what I'm
town's
talking about.
So
Yeah.
they're going to be just presenting to the public
Okay.
in the public hearing, and as well as I will be presenting for the public hearing.
That's fine, Mary.
Just so
Remember
you-
last year, I asked the questions at the wrong time, and it presented a difficulty. I will be taking the mic and saying again, I want to know some of these things if I don't get them at that meeting. So I'm giving you time. You understand, because I said the questions at the last time,
Yeah, I
the
just
wrong
wanted to
time.
clarify that it's not necessarily a joint meeting between.
That's fine.
Between the groups.
Nope, I'm
It's just
totally
strictly a
still
public
getting
hearing,
all
that's I
these
just wanted to-
details and stuff like that. I just don't want to not mention it here, and then we come up there again, and I mention again, and now I said it at the wrong time, and everyone's upset with me. So I would like to see these things to be in order to make a decision on yes or no on our end. Are we given the 3.9, or are we doing $1? Like, it helps me. It helps me to understand where are we going with this. The last question I have is, I see in the budget about cutting 7 teachers. Now, Assistant Nash, in one of the Board of Ed meetings, talked about the paras that were open positions and that they no longer exist. That was part of the cutting. How many open positions do you have? And are these 7 teachers coming out of the open positions that we've been budgeting for? Or are we cutting positions? Like real people that are actually working right now, not filling your slot because we should have them.
So some of the positions were identified because we've had difficulty in hiring for them. So we are supplementing through substitutes and other programmatic online services that we have. And some of them are filled positions that we have, and they're identified due to enrollment in those areas.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I'd like to see the surplus. Like, why would you cut a Latin teacher if you've got $600,000 in your surplus? So that's the type of stuff it's difficult for me to understand.
So we're not cutting anything for the current year. It would be to meet next year's budget expectations.
With a $600,000 surplus, you cut a real person.
I don't know that I'm going to have 600,000.
Okay, well, that's what we're trying to determine here.
No, but this
Yeah.
is a budget for next school year.
Okay.
The surplus from this school year isn't projected for next school year. We're asking for a dollar increase and a percent increase that we feel we will need to provide the program that we want to provide for the students and support for our staff if we were to be fully staffed, right? I explained that our current surplus is basically because we are understaffed, and we have been understaffed all year, similar to last year and the year before.
Oh, I
Right?
get that.
Grossly
That's why I'm saying
understaffed.
real people or the people that you were trying to hire and you didn't.
It's a mix of both.
Yeah.
But we cannot, I don't want you to feel like the board or I or the administration is cutting staff while we have a surplus.
Yeah, that's what I don't
I
get.
didn't eliminate anything for this year, and I'm handing you back money, right? It is next year.
So next
So-
year, you predict no surplus? Is that what you're
I
saying?
predict no surplus every year, right?
Okay,
I
well,
am-
to me, that's like an issue, yeah, it's kind of, every
I
year, no
expect to be fully
surplus.
staffed.
You're gonna cut.
Right, and then
All
we're
right.
not fully staffed.
No,
Ms.
that's
Mar-
fine, I think that presents a
I understand.
I
conundrum.
may shed some light on this. One thing you got to consider is when you're predicting a budget, you're not anticipating, all right, well, we have these vacancies that we're trying to fill. You're not predicting, oh, well, we're not going to fill them, so we're only going to base our budget on if they're not filled. You actually have to base it on, this is what we project to spend because these are the positions we're looking to fill. And a lot of that, as he said, is why they end up with surpluses, is because they have positions that they're looking to fill, haven't been able to fill with full-time positions, whether they use subs or part-time, just to fill what they can. But you don't.
No,
plan
I
a
get
budget
that part, but I'm just saying,
thinking
so
that
you're
there's gonna be
already
a
planning on cutting 7, and you don't even know what your surplus next year is gonna be. That's what I find
Well,
difficult.
it's you
Yeah.
don't plan on having a surplus. You don't
Okay,
build a
no,
budget
I think it's
with a
evident what
plan.
I'm saying, and, it's cool.
I do too, Michelle.
You want to let Patty
Norm?
speak? I'd just like to address a little bit of that. So I think you have to understand the challenges that are faced by all the school districts in the state right now, and that includes Killingly. So we've had a lot of staff turnover. We've had a lot of staff leaving. They're hiring staff as staff is leaving when they can. And then you wind up with a situation where, Ms. Clark cannot predict down to even 100,000 or more what your final surplus, if any, is going to be, because she's looking at numbers that are changing weekly, okay? So I don't want to speak for her, but I just want to kind of like address a couple of the things that have been dealt with here. So from what she's been telling us, and I'll defer to her on this, but I think we're looking at maybe $1 million in surplus this year due to unfilled staff positions, maybe.
I'm not gonna quote that number yet, because that work is yet to be done over the next couple of weeks, but, I can definitely see it. It is growing as we, move through the year, yeah.
So essentially, we're going to be nowhere near 2.7 million is what I'm getting at.
No.
So, that number, that's long past, okay? So we'll be looking at a much smaller surplus, and that surplus isn't due to over budgeting, it's due to unfilled staff positions mostly, because most of our costs have gone up. The cost of fuel, materials, supplies, outsourced services, that's all going, we're dealing with inflation in our own personal budgets, so you can see what's going on. So in my mind, I think this budget is, for planning purposes, it's reasonable to the taxpayer, and it also covers most of the costs.
Okay.
But there's no fat in this budget, obviously. The only fat would come in if we don't fill positions, which is not what you try to do. When you identify positions that you need, you try to fill those positions. So we've addressed this high staff turnover by increasing pay and benefits for certified staff. We've also increased pay and benefits for bus drivers and all other staff, but where we were really deficient and uncompetitive with surrounding districts, we try to increase. So a lot of this 3.94 increase is due to commitments that the board has already made to staff. So we're trying to not have our teachers being taken away by surrounding districts, not having our bus drivers taken away by surroundings, not having any staff taken away by surrounding districts in large numbers, which was what we were experiencing before. So we tried to address that, and we also want to protect our kids, so we added the armed security. So we're already committed to those increased costs. So if we tried to decrease this budget any further, we would wind up not, in my opinion, not meeting the goals of the district to educate the kids and take care of them properly. So I'll come down off my soapbox now, but thank you.
Ms. George, if you want to speak.
Okay, I got a few things. So, first of all, where do I want to start? Okay, Bob, HB 5003. You alluded to that a bit. Now, that bill is to fully fund special education, correct?
Yeah, that is a part of it. It is a very overarching funding
Right.
bill.
How much would that impact Killingly just for our special education if that were to go through?
Well, I don't have the impact of
Ballpark.
that bill broken down. I do know that overall, we would see an increase in funding because one of the big things that HB 5003 does is it brings ECS, the education cost sharing, or the equalization grant, it's also called. It brings that to full funding sooner than in the governor's budget. So you see,
Right.
you start to see more money sooner.
That's what I said. So how much money do we have in special education needs right now?
Just in special education?
What, okay, let me say this again. So if that were to go through, what would our impact be for Killingly? Like, what is our special education expense right now? Ballpark.
I think she's asking for general
Yes, I am.
special education costs for the district. Yeah, projected for next year. I didn't bring that number with me.
I think the short answer to that, Mrs. George, would be a large number. Would you
That's
think
not
that?
good enough.
But, you're talking about, well, what if I win megabucks tomorrow?
Okay, so over the
we have
past
no
5
idea
years,
what any.
What was your average cost on special education? And that's been
What do we budget?
just an average. And what would we forecast if we stayed on trend? I don't think that's a difficult question.
So I understand Patty's question. She wants to know if special education becomes fully funded, how is the budget going to be decreased?
All right, so, thank you, Dr. Nash, for bringing your other budget book with you. So we have projected $13,807,952 and change for special education next year, which is a 4.16% increase. Now, that was in the earlier budget development cycle. As you know, we are projecting a reduction in staff for PPS for next year, 16 part-time paraprofessional positions in particular coming out of special education. So that number would be reduced a little bit.
Okay.
But, $13 million out of a $46 million budget, over 20% of your budget is special education costs.
That's what I was trying to get. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's my first question. All right, moving on. How much staff do you have at Goodyear total? And I will say, I'm looking at your budget, and we did ask last year to see some better breakdown. I'm really not seeing it. And I'm going to say, go back to what Michelle said about other. Now you're saying it's broken down in the book. Well, if I go to 5890, other objects across the board in this budget, there's still no definition. And if you go to, I'll just grab one. Information technology, page 64, 525% increase, went from $4,000 to 25. What is that?
Excuse me.
Because
what
it's
page-
under other
what page
objects.
were you on? Thank you. And what was your
Sorry.
question there?
Yeah, the question is, why did it go up $21,000? $21,000.
That line item includes the IT workroom renovation of $21,000.
Yeah. We did a renovation of the
Okay.
IT space, or we're,
So this is our frustration. When other objects is useless, when we're trying to figure out the costs. When we're trying to decide how much money you should get. So this is frustrating from our standpoint because we can't determine when Norm said there's no fat in this budget, I can't say that's true by looking at every page because there's so much, you just don't know what it is. Mary explains what the revenue, the differences are. Excuse me, I'm on medication. I might be a little hot today. But the point is, this is not a big improvement from last year. I understand the contractual, the minimum wage, the contract with the unions. I get all that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that increase that we have to do is 2.78% on the wages in the if you break it down, correct?
yeah, it's about that.
Okay, so the rest of this, now you have object codes 300, 400, 500, all grouped together again. And you explained earlier, that could be an electrician, it could be professional indoctrination development. We don't know. So why are those grouped together? They're very different.
Well, they're grouped together because it's just a generalized category of other purchase services. And then I explain what the examples are.
That's about $10 million. And there's no breakdown of that?
Well, then there's other purchase services then listed throughout the budget. So it tells you where it is in the budget.
Okay, so let me
So if
ask you
it's
this.
other purchase
Where does
services
professional
in the
development fall? Which group?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Where does the professional development, which bucket, versus say an electrician that had to come in and fix something?
So professional development could be in multiple areas in the budget book. It could be at the
Of
school
course it
level,
could.
or it could be at a central office level.
Okay, so would I be able to get a list of all your professional development and each contract you have so that we can see how much each one costs individually?
Yeah, that could be generated.
Could you give us that before the public hearing?
Well, we could try.
Oh, well, you've said that
It's-
before and I'm still waiting for
Well,
information.
it's not a document that pre-exists, right? So it's a document that we would have to generate, right? And so that takes time, right? And we
Okay.
have, so it can be generated. Can it be generated in the time frame that you're asking? I don't know.
Well, we asked for the budget to be more clear and yet that was a year and that didn't happen. So how
This
many
budget book reflects
paraprofessionals do you
everything
have
that
at
we
Goodyear?
talked about at the joint meeting. Pagination, table of contents, right, et cetera. It reflects those things.
Okay. How many paraprofessionals do you have at Goodyear?
specifically at Goodyear?
Yes, please.
I'm looking it up in the book.
Because I'm finding it very difficult to follow this budget again.
So there are two that are
Only two.
funded in the general fund. And then when you look at supported by other funds, there are, well, I gotta total them up here, 2, 4, excuse me? 12.
So 12, and that would be the forecasted amount for this current budget we're talking about, so we're not getting confused. We're not bringing on any, this would be for next year. 12 would stay the same, plus the 2, so 14.
So not necessarily, right? Because paraprofessionals are deployed based upon the student population in each school. And so
That was my-
that changes.
Okay, so
year
that's
to
my next
year.
question.
What was that?
How many students are there at Goodyear, and are we still, is that a full day or is it still split day?
Most of them are full day, pre-K, but we do have 2 split classes, part-time, pre-K.
Yeah,
And the enrollment is, well, I gotta find that table for you. It's in the book, and it's also in my presentation.
that's what okay, hold on, let me look.
101 students as of October 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Okay, and I think I only have one other thing.
Right, but you do understand that the paraprofessionals, the number changes. It changes
Yeah, 'cause
within the
depending on the
school year,
IEPs, yep,
and
I
it
get it.
changes year to year, depending upon the needs of the students that are in that school,
Yep.
right?
And what was my other? I had, oh. Let me look. There was one more question. I'll get back to it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I thought of it. Okay, so you're renewing that social studies. What program is that? Is it a new program you're bringing in, or is it a renewal on one we already had?
Is it the economic position at 8.55?
You talked about a renewal of a social studies. Hold on, you put a slide up about it.
Are you talking about part of the decision package?
Yeah,
I
it wasn't
believe
social
so.
studies. I talked
Hold
about
on.
family consumer science.
Nope, not that one. Central, nope. Where is it?
Oh,
You talked about a 6-year social studies program.
so it's a current program. That could be
Oh,
one of
okay,
the,
it's just a renewal.
yes,
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Wood.
Thank you. I have a few questions there. One of the bills I was recently told about, since you seem to be more up on this there, and I can have an appreciation for trying to keep track of it, this legislative cycle seems to be heavy, very heavy with bills. EMS alone there, we have, I've looked at 2-3 pages worth of just the bills and the summation of that bill, let alone the actual legislation. So I can appreciate what you're going through with that. One of the bills, though, that I believe is impacting education comes to paraprofessionals and a mandate on their salaries. Do you see that taking traction, and what kind of, if it does take traction, what kind of impact would it have to the upcoming fiscal year?
It would I don't know if that has traction. That is actually one of the bills that hadn't caught my attention until just recently. It would provide additional pay for paras, and so depending upon where that pay falls, it could have an increase in our budget. It certainly wouldn't decrease any contracts that we have with our employees, but it could add additional costs.
Yeah. That's where I was kind of curious if it's had traction or not. Because it's a
I don't-
significant amount of money that.
Yeah, I don't know if it has,
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
if it has traction.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what the legislation.
There's also a bill out there to address all the unfunded mandates, and that would be an unfunded mandate. So
Correct.
there's competing bills, one to reduce unfunded mandates, but there are other bills that
To-
are adding unfunded
Unfunded.
mandate burdens.
Welcome to legislation. What has the minimum wage increase this year? What impact is that having? Do you have any employees that are actually at minimum wage, or?
So we have some employees that are at the minimum wage level, but what the board did, so most of those are non-unionized employees, so they're unaffiliated. And so the board addressed that by increasing salaries. So this year, minimum wage goes up twice within the fiscal year. It went up at the beginning, and then it goes up again in June, right? And so the board made decisions to increase pay to the June amount early on. So we're not going to have any difficulties this school year. And the board has not yet seen the proposal for the unaffiliated staff, but I'll be bringing that to them at the second meeting in April. And we will stay ahead of minimum wage increases.
Yeah. Okay. I know you mentioned in fuel costs. Obviously, we're all impacted by the fuel cost part, and the buses fill up right here at our town garage. That increase, though, is that the town? I know you guys obviously have the town and the Board of Education talk. Is that the same? And it's probably a better question for our town manager. Is that going to be the same kind of impact that the town's going to have, or? Because I'm just curious there. I was thinking
Yeah, I
locked into the
can't
same
speak for the
price.
town, but we, the fuel is bid for both the town and the Board of Ed use.
But are they the same price, I guess, is the question I'm asking?
Yes,
Okay.
and here comes Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so you are, so we have already locked into the fuel bid for next year, and our actual rates didn't really change very much. I want to say diesel, our increase was only a few cents, so there wasn't much change, but I believe that they might have had different numbers within their budget in the prior year. But this year, we've already locked in for all of next fiscal year on all of our petroleum products, gas, diesel, and what we could on heating oil.
Okay.
We're all locked.
Which will save a question on Monday, because I was going to have the same question for you.
Could I just piggyback on Ray's question? Because it's, with a lock-in, did they mandate that you take a certain amount per year for heating oil?
For all of our products, we do put in gallon usage, and so we are committing to those gallon usage. We are usually conservative on that. With the heating oil, we did not include the high school because we do anticipate that they will move over to gas, so they will be on market for that product. But yeah, otherwise we have to do a buyout.
Okay. In regards to textbooks, I know you had talked about this earlier. What you may not have this number off the top of your head, but what percentage are you using electronic versus actual physical books?
Yeah, so I don't have that number. I will say that even when we purchase a hard copy of a book, we also are purchasing digital access to the book and resources online. But most of our programs are phasing out the hard copies of books.
Okay, so that eventually will be some kind of savings there. Obviously, I'm not anticipating millions of dollars, but A
Right,
little more.
so the digital copies do tend to be a little bit less expensive, but you have to renew a little bit more frequently.
Okay. And that's a question for the manufacturers of why. But is there a, because I assume you have to buy the licenses for that, is there a savings when you buy in bulk, or, because I'm assuming you have to buy one for each student, if you will? Or
So we
maybe I don't understand
just
that fully.
purchase X number of licenses,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you anticipate what your enrollment, well, you know what, so like if it's at the high school,
Mm-hmm.
you know in advance how many kids have enrolled for certain courses,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just add a few in case you get, course changes or new students, that kind of stuff.
Okay. And I think the only other thing there, because I think we've belabored this point a little bit more, on the other services part there, if we could actually, because I can understand a little bit of the frustration on that, if we could get a list of like, I'm not asking for every single dollar amount, because I know that's going to be time consuming and Ms. Clark is only one person. But if we could get a list of like what those actually are, whether it's, staff appreciation, things like that, like an actual physical list there, what that kind of does, what that not does, but goes forward with.
So, other purchase services,
Mm-hmm.
and the other line
Mhm.
are two different
different
things,
things.
right?
Right.
So the other line, like if we were doing a staff appreciation thing, that would come out of other.
Mhm.
If we were hiring, a contractor to come in and do roof repairs, that's other purchase services.
Okay.
So they're two separate things.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the confusion and frustration comes in there, because we're not.
A
We
lot.
just see the, the line that says other purchase services or other. and then-
Objects.
And then that kind of gives the confusion of, well, why do we have this, and why are there two different things? And so, a list maybe of those things might be helpful. Other than that, I mean, I definitely do appreciate when you discuss the ASO. Obviously, that's one of the biggest things. We want to make sure, even in this past week, unfortunately, we saw what happened 14 minutes later. Police were able to neutralize the threat, but somebody inside the school could do that a lot faster than 14 minutes later. So I do appreciate the Board of Ed and the administration for moving forward with this, and obviously that's something I'm more than willing to fund to make sure our students are safe.
Thank you,
Thank-
Mr. Wood.
I appreciate that.
Any other comments?
So which teaching positions that are currently filled are slated to be cut for next budget year?
So, again, these are just preliminarily identified. The cuts have not yet been made because we don't have a final budget at this point. But preliminarily, we're looking at technology, computer technology at the high school because we've not been able to fill that position, and we're looking at a partnership with the community college to provide some educational services for the kids. One that would allow the kids to take the courses but also earn college credit. We'd be looking for that for world languages as well, so that world language positions at the high school are also being considered.
Which specific world languages?
Spanish and Latin. Not all the Spanish program, but we have 3 Spanish positions. We've been unable really to fill 2 of them, and we've been augmenting through substitutes and the use of Rosetta Stone software for the students, but we don't feel that's adequate. And so, again, a partnership with the community college. We're looking at an elementary teaching position at the Memorial School. Yet to be identified where that would be. It would be dependent upon class size enrollment. We're looking at Spanish also at the KISS school. We've been unable to fill that position. We have 1 year well, actually, it was a partial year contract for that position with a person who, again, is using software and it is currently more of a cultural class versus a language class. So we're looking at that position. We are looking at a reading support position at the Killingly Central School. It was a position that was originally intended to be funded through a grant, but we were unable to do that, and so it's been in the general budget. The person who is in that position has been doing a fine job and will likely have a position in our district next year because of seniority. But it is a position that we've identified. I don't know if I got them all, but that's a bulk of them.
All right, so I'm going to speak in regards to the Latin program. I did see Mr. Dodge at the Board of Education meeting. So all of my children took his Latin class. So he begins his Latin class by starting out with basic English grammar for the deficits most of those children have in the grammar. And I can tell you that every single one of my children passed the Latin college test, so they did not have to take a language.
Yeah, I would also extol the virtues of our Latin program and the teachings of Mr. Dodge. It has nothing, a budget decision is not based upon the efficacy of the program. When you are making programmatic changes or staffing changes, it has nothing to do with the value of that program or the skill and talent of a particular person who happens to fill it, right? When you have to make budget decisions, it comes down to what is the impact on the kids and how many kids are going to be impacted. Unfortunately, in the case of our Latin program, we're running 3 classes of Latin. One of them has 8 children, one of them has 2 children, and one of them has 3 children. So the Latin program, as valuable as it is, our students are not enrolled, right? And so when I am forced to identify areas where the budget can be reduced, I look for where, the least amount of impact for the kids.
Just on that, I just want to make sure I know what you said. I'm going to repeat it back. So computer tech, one position, and these are all just drafts.
This is preliminary.
Draft, right?
That is correct.
Computer tech, one is an open position at this time. Haven't been able to hire that one. Spanish, 2 teachers, and those are open. Latin, 1, and that's a teacher that's currently teaching. Elementary teacher, was that open or currently teaching? Or undetermined?
All the positions at KMS, teaching positions, they're filled.
Okay, so that's a filled position. No, I'm
It
just
is,
trying to.
right? So
Yep.
we'd be looking to maybe cut a position through attrition if we have any resignations or retirements out of that building.
Yep, and then Spanish, again, 2 open positions.
Yes,
Okay, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
Anyone?
Yep.
I do. Okay, so I hate to keep beating you up, Bob. So the Latin, so you're saying you don't evaluate the value of the staff 30 years, or you just go by quantity, not quality? I'm just going to put it out there. Your highest performers in that school take Latin, and they have for decades.
So again, it is not a decision that is taken lightly, right? I do see value to Latin. My own children all took Latin in their high school experience. went on to good schools, right, et cetera, and are leading, so far, productive adult lives. So did Latin have a part of that? Well, it was a part of their educational program, but so was everything else that they took in high school. And so when, again, if I cut Latin outside of the budget, it would be due, it could be due to, there are no children left. But you may recall 2 years ago, Latin was also being considered for reduction as a part of the budget. And then through the town meeting, a motion was made to add money back to the Board of Education budget to put it back at a 2% increase. That is what eventually was passed at referendum. And I reinstated Latin despite the fact that there was low enrollment, right? So there is value to the program. But when money is cut out of the budget, every single area needs to be evaluated, and you look for areas that will have the least amount of impact on the kids. And while there are 13 children currently enrolled in Latin, the numbers for next year are going to be very similar based upon enrollment that's underway at the high school right now. And so will there be kids impacted by the loss of Latin? Yes, but it would be a smaller amount of money than if I had eliminated something else. It would be a smaller amount of students impacted if I had to eliminate something else.
So how many kids from Brooklyn are enrolled currently?
Yeah, 88.
So you're estimating only a drop of about 18 kids? Because I read something about 70 students estimated last year, or did you say that today?
I don't
From
think
Brooklyn?
I said 70. We were told that the incoming freshman class for next year would be around 9 students, which is,
Oh, you mean it's dropping by about 70? So 9
no,
versus
I don't think I
88,
said
you said?
70 at all regarding enrollment.
Okay, so you're saying there's only about 9 students from Brooklyn?
That was the initial projection. So could it be
Okay.
more? Yes. Could it be less? Yes.
And that was for
That's what you're looking at
incoming
right now.
freshmen, just for that one grade.
That is correct. Just ninth
So
grade.
just for, okay.
To extend the meeting, I make a motion to extend the meeting for 15 minutes.
Motion's been made by Mr. Grandolski to extend the meeting for 15 minutes. Seconded by Ms. Murphy. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. This meeting will be extended for 15 minutes. Ms. Martin.
I just wanted to add
Okay,
to,
so, can I say one more thing and then you guys can take over? All right, so when we look at, to follow up on what Ula and Michelle were saying, other objects, Ray talked about other purchase services. So contracted services, which we have no breakdown of what that is, object or code 5420, that's an increase of $185,704. Then you look at 5590, the other purchase services, that's an increase of over 200%. So $423,000 that we have no idea what that money is. So you add those, that's almost $600,000, Bob, that we don't even know what we're paying for. So this is where we have frustration. And then you're talking about cutting core academics. Yeah, we don't even know what you pay for in contracted services for soft skills. I think part of the problem here is priorities.
Well, thank you for your opinion on that. And I do understand that Ms. Calorio may be providing you with a little bit deeper dive into her budget request, but that is because that is directly under your purview. The Board of Education gets a deeper dive through the budget workshops that we do. And so in the budget book, in the book that we use for the Board of Ed budget development, we do list in there for the Board of Education the contracted services, et cetera, that we use these line items for. I don't bring that here. I bring you a little bit more generalized, but the Board of Education does see that level of detail, just as Ms. Colorio provides that detail to this council.
And I appreciate that, but we're all taxpayers and all of the Board of Ed money comes out of Killing Lake. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that, and our board development meetings are advertised, announced. We even did a special announcement of those meetings to encourage people to attend through the local media outlets. And we do get some attendees, but it is not, they're not well-attended meetings, which is unfortunate.
Ms. Barclay?
So, this question's for Mary. Is the town manager's proposed budget as was presented to us, this booklet, is this the one that's available to the town? So the same information that Mary presented to us, the line items, is also available to every citizen in the community. So I believe that the budget that you present to the BOE should also be visible to us and the entire community.
That's a fair statement, and we do have documents up on the website that show some of that detail, and we'll do a better job if that is what is needed for people to have
So that
more
was-
thorough understanding.
So that was asked for last year? More clarity?
Yeah, I know that different times I've said, can I have the book? Can I have the book? Because it takes me so long to process. So I think that is a good idea. And maybe if the new package with Miss Clark comes and she gets some help, we can, when I go to those meetings, Bob, there's no book for me to look at. So I look like the crazy person with the camera trying to see the screen up front or whatever. So that might be a good thing for the future, that everybody has access to the books from the meetings if they want it. But everybody's busy too, so maybe if that package happens. Thank you.
Or even if it's just on the BOE's website, not necessarily paper copies. So, Mr. Wood?
I'm going to yield to Ms. Martin. She's been wanting to speak for a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. I just wanted to add about the Latin course. We've been getting a lot of traction, a lot of passion from the community between public comment, letters that we're receiving, comments from the town council. I think it might be something to consider when the community's coming in. We don't see them coming in for anything else when the community's coming in and they're fighting for a course. It may be, you may want to consider just digging deep into maybe finding some other area that can be cut and possibly saving the Latin course. I just wanted to mention that I think that might be a good idea.
All areas are still under consideration.
Yes, okay, thank you.
I have another comment in regards to Kelly's. So Mr. Dodge's course is more vigorous than the Latin course that's offered at UConn. His students learn more than they do in a college class.
Thank you.
I know that we're concerned about the Latin, but this Rosetta Stone and the foreign language and that to me, I know we're focused on the Latin in the high school, but in the middle school when they're getting taught by Rosetta Stone, I think that needs to be more looked at than high school and the Latin. These kids aren't learning on Rosetta Stone. They need teachers. And if we're gonna cut Latin for the 13 students that are there, I know you're concerned about that course for the high school, but in order for kids to get up to that Latin, they need to be taught at the lower levels, not by Rosetta Stone. That's
I mean, I know we're worried about the Latin and the high school students and the college that they're gonna get into, but in order for kids to get up to Latin, they need to be focused a little bit more with not having a Spanish teacher. They don't have them. So, I just wanna put that out there.
I have a couple things. One is, I think your points on the budget breakdown and, you being supplied with that is valid, and we should do that. I'd also say that when we went through the budget process, a lot of these items, including one that was mentioned by Mrs. George tonight, were questioned as to what that is exactly when you see 200% increase, things like that. So we did get answers, but I think it would be nice if the whole community had answers for all of those items. So I wholeheartedly endorse that. On the Latin, I don't think we've ever seen a program get as much support from the community as the Latin. We had a lot of passionate speakers come and speak about, how they benefited from it. They'd like to see it continued for, students of the present and the future. And I agree with that. And I just like to say that, we spend, and rightfully so, we spend a lot of money on special ed, but we don't, because it's not state mandated, we don't do a whole lot for our overachievers. And I think Latin is really a minimal thing in the budget process. And I think, that needs to be maintained. As far as the Spanish classes, I think, we have a lot of Spanish speakers in this state and this country now, so I think that would benefit students tremendously. I will say that, my parents spoke fluent French. My grandparents spoke fluent French. One of my grandparents didn't even speak English that well. He spoke very fluent Canadian French. So I had an advantage taking French in school. So, of course, that's what I went with. But the students that didn't have that advantage, I spoke French from my grandparents. The students that didn't have that advantage at that time, I'm talking, barely modern history. We're talking the 1970s. The students that didn't have that advantage did not get a whole lot of fluency taking many years of a foreign language in school, and I'm hoping that's changed now. But I think more of a conversational approach to these foreign languages would help the students a lot, immerse them in the language, because, reading it and responding to a teacher a few times, not all that beneficial. I never took part in the Rosetta Stone, but it gets a lot of compliments from people that use it, not in a school setting. But I would definitely like to see more Spanish in class instruction, and I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wood?
I know you've mentioned there a few times there, you've obviously talked about in your subcommittees and obviously as a full board, some of these things. One thing I would ask, I guess, is, the town of Killingly, we utilize our Facebook page, Facebook Live. That's probably the easiest way for people to see that who are unable to physically attend or may want to go back and watch your meeting. Because I actually even had somebody recently who lives in another town said, I had nothing better to do at 11 o'clock at night, so I watched your town meeting. And, of course, we had been done by then. If you guys could utilize that, so that way it would maybe even clarify some of these questions there so people can go back and look. Obviously, the town hall has more the capability to do that. I just don't know if that's a little bit of extra training on your end or if there's something.
So those budget meetings were, in fact, recorded.
Okay.
And they're posted on the Board of Ed website.
On the website, yeah. And sometimes that's not the.
And there were live streamed as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying, sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to do. I know I've tried accessing Channel 22 through the website, and because I don't have cable like most people these days use streaming services instead. So that's Facebook is another easier way of doing it. I don't know if you utilize YouTube as well. I apologize for not knowing some of these things here. Just for that additional accessibility for people to see things or go back and see things easier. I know, like you said, the website is one way of utilizing it. There's just other ways too that people may not think of the website. They may want to see Killingly Board of Education Facebook page. So.
So I'd like to say one more thing. I wanted to follow up on my earlier comments. I want to thank Norm for pointing out what you did about the Latin for overachievers. I think removing core academics before other things it just should not happen. I mean, we're an alliance district for a reason. We need to work on that, and that has a lot to do with core academics. So I don't know, maybe advice to the Board of Ed in the future. I'm going to go out on a limb, but maybe you guys can put in some kind of ordinance policy, check with state legislation. Maybe when you're doing budget cuts, you cannot cut a core academic, no matter what it is, until you have exhausted all other avenues for potential cuts. Also, I wanted to thank Laura for bringing that up, because we can't cut teachers over trainings, workshops, contracts with this one or that one. We need to have our teachers staffed, and I know there's a national shortage, so that's not your fault, but we need to prioritize academics over all else, pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Okay. Seeing none, I would like to thank everyone from the Board of Ed and the superintendent for coming today. And as far as the town governmental budget, we will be continuing a review of that on Monday at 7 p.m. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Mr. Wood. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.